Welcome back to Mama Needs a Moment, and another very warm welcome to our Her Plus expert providers who are joining us for our discussion today on mom metabolism and what changes, what doesn't, and what you can do about it. Together, we are all striving to help moms understand what is actually within their control regarding their metabolism, what's normal, and what sustainable habits truly support long term health and vitality. Before we begin, each expert will briefly introduce themselves and share their area of focus. This way, our listeners will be able to tell through the voice who is talking. And then I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that our podcast episodes are also available in video format on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to see all of our experts and the energy we give as we're talking to each other, that's another option for everyone that's listening.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kate Lehman, and I am a certified nurse midwife. I have been working here in the Triangle since 2009 in a variety of areas, home birth, birth center, and attending births in hospitals. And I recently started a practice called Mother Love Wellness after having observed some of the gaps in women's healthcare. I'm focusing on early pregnancy, less than 10 weeks gestation, the first postpartum year, and the perimenopause.
I'm Abby DeVries. I'm a family physician and a certified menopause practitioner. And I also recently opened my own practice. It's called Sabia Health. It's a direct primary care practice focused on women in midlife, located in Durham, but I can see anyone in North Carolina virtually. And so I'm actively recruiting for patients who are just looking for kind of full scope primary care or just need some help getting through menopause and perimenopause.
I'm Catherine Andrew, and I'm a registered dietitian. I have been in practice for about 20 years and have a practice that works primarily with women. And we do comprehensive nutrition, whole body support where we focus on digestive health, hormone health, and metabolic health, and really love to support the nervous system above all else as it relates to nutrition and health in that way. I have recently, in the last few years, delved more into focusing specifically on women in perimenopause. So I work with women in that age group and love my work and love helping women navigate so much of the clutter that we see online.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Parise, founder of Great Days by Sarah. I'm an ACE certified personal trainer going into my 21st year, which is crazy. So yes, I started when I was like 8 years old. And then I tagged on a perinatal wellness specialty when I found out I was pregnant. So I work with mamas that are going through pregnancy or trying to get pregnant, and then through their whole journey of becoming moms, where we tend to fall to the bottom of the priority list. And I learned that the hard way as a mom. So now I work with moms in the physical, the mental, and emotional capacity of carving out 2% of the day for themselves so they can love the way they look and feel, have more energy and confidence.
So, in our last episode, we discussed that metabolism is dynamic. Once we understand that metabolism changes with our season of life, it opens the door to a bigger question about what actually influences it. If metabolism isn't about willpower or calorie counting, what symptoms are really driving metabolic health for moms, and how do things like muscle, hormones, that is so huge, sleep, as Sarah had mentioned in our last episode, nourishment and stress, how does this all interact to support or disrupt our metabolism? Right now in my stage of life, I am all in the hormones. So I'm really excited to dive into this question more with you all because I want to help moms understand when there could be something like a red flag. So like Catherine, for example, you work a lot with hormones. When is there a red flag that hormones should be looked at more or nutrition needs to be looked at more?
I mean, Abby could speak to the hormones as well, but red flags, I would say, is when some of these symptoms become disruptive to our life, right? Like that would be true for a lot of different specialties. But if someone is experiencing increasingly worse sleep, now Sarah has referenced already well that like sleep is something that tends to be an issue at many transitions in life, but certainly like sleep can be one where then if you're not sleeping well, you're not going to be processing glucose very well, and you're not going to be making hormones very efficiently. And guess what? You're also not going to want to connect with other people or be able to manage low progesterone anxiety, right? So it is going to seep into so many different areas that then also affect metabolism. So I think red flags would be things that really start to impact other areas of our life and other systems as well. I do think with metabolism, anytime we talk about it, we've got to think of it as this interconnected web of a lot of different systems, right? So there's digestive health, there's hormone health, there's nervous system support, there's blood sugar, and there's no one part that can be broken. And, and it's in and of itself, it's all going to affect other things. So when I see red flags are women that are pushing through symptoms that are very much interfering with their quality of life. And that's when we would be looking at supporting, figuring out where are some of those systems off and how do we support them better.
Fatigue, which is always hard to tease out because there's so many other reasons to be tired with the demands on your life and things like that. Changes in appetite, changes in bowel habits, mood, can be affected by hormones for sure. I think those would be the major things. I think a lot of times we find that the hormones, like on the lab panel, look perfectly normal. And I think people, want there to be like a thyroid problem because then we can treat that. And although thyroid conditions are very common, most of the time when we check them, they're normal. The thing that I think is even more common and probably under-recognized in the traditional medical community is the insulin resistance that you see first with higher than average insulin levels with fasting glucose in the morning. And then, a hemoglobin A1C or your average blood sugar trending up over time into kind of that pre-diabetic range. And that's, I think, somewhat under-recognized, but actually largely silent. And then there's the hormone, the progesterone, estrogen, which is also hard to measure because it cycles. And so you kind of get a one point in time or one part of the day to know what that level is. And so it's always a challenge to kind of interpret the labs. And then cortisol is the other one that, again, generally, unless people have like a tumor or something, their cortisol level is normal. But that doesn't mean that it's appropriate. Their stress responses and kind of how they're managing stress are appropriate. And there are, a lot of symptoms that people have where they say, think their cortisol system is stressed, which it is, but it's not to the point where you see it in the labs. So those are kind of the major kind of hormone systems that we look at. And we always want to rule it out. Also want to kind of help support women to feel better, even if those are normal.
Thank you so much for diving into that more. And I've selfishly directed it towards hormones because that's where I'm sitting right now in my life. But I would like to open it up to the other systems that are really driving metabolic health for moms, such as muscle and sleep and nourishment, as well as the stress and how all of that interacts to support or disrupt it. So does anyone have more to add in those areas?
I love to lean in on strength training. When people say, if I'm going to do something, what should I do? And I say it's strength training. And the simple fact is, you talk about like calories in, calories out, which I just read on Instagram the other day, a male trainer who was working with perimenopausal women is like, it's simple. You burn more than you take in, and that is your magic formula. And it's simply nowhere near the case, especially during times of change. But for the strength training part, muscles burn 3 times more calories than fat burns. So that alone will take care of some of that burn. But then you think about like everything else that goes along with it. Like my joints feel different running than they did in my 30s. And because I've been strength training for most of my adult life, ebbing and flowing like most of us, but those joints are supported by stronger muscles. So I'm hoping the goal is, as I age, that fall risk will decrease and injury, like just around the house, reaching for paper towels will decrease, that I will have have muscles and train functionally, that can help through these periods of change, especially perimenopause. I work with mostly perimenopausal women or people that are just up against that line now, and they notice a huge difference in almost everything when they start incorporating strength training. And even if you've never done it, like it doesn't need to be something you once did in your 20s and then you gave up while you became a mom and then you come back to it. I've worked with women in their 60s that are incorporating strength training that can stand the benefits of it and can feel it pretty quickly through a program of building that muscle, building that strength. Because you pair muscle and that nutrition piece together and balance out that insulin, and it is one of those magic formulas that can help you feel a lot better.
Just to piggyback on what Sarah was describing, particularly in perimenopause, but at other phases of a woman's life, we cannot be site specific and target where we're going to lose fat, where we're going to lose weight. But what we can target are these large muscle groups, right? The largest muscle groups in the body, the quads, hamstrings, the glutes. And what we know is that the resting metabolic rate of muscle is so much higher and will burn calories. So if we really focus on those areas, building those muscles, you're going to work smarter. You're going to get more bang for your buck, and it's going to help with all those things, insulin resistance, your joint health, endorphins get released. So just, I think for women, almost at any age, but especially perimenopause, that strength training component is so important, and you'll get a lot more return with that investment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's underemphasized, and I think that the shift is changing, that even, the moms who are listening in their 20s, 30s, if you are still in your childbearing years, and building muscle prior to a pregnancy can also help make sure that you don't have gestational diabetes, that the weight is easier to get off postpartum. And so I think, and you're kind of building your peak bone mass. And so Sarah's right, at any age you can start weight training, but the sooner you start it, the greater benefit you're going to see. So I wish I'd known that more. I think we talk about it a lot more. People can somewhat safely strength train in pregnancy, under the guidance of their doctors or midwife.
Absolutely. And great for your pelvic floor also, building that pelvic floor strength and the pelvic floor recovery afterwards.
Dr. Abby, you touched on this a bit, but what are some key things that we could do to help our sleep? I know Sarah had mentioned she's struggling with sleep right now. What are some things that we can do when our sleep is disrupted?
Yeah, I mean, there's the simple things like making sure you're not drinking caffeine too close to bedtime, limiting alcohol consumption. But a lot of times the sleep problems kind of, go beyond that. I think having a good routine where it can stretch physically and kind of clear your mind at the same time, and just kind of figure out how to put some of the things aside that you kind of worry about when you go to bed. Putting a notebook by the bedside, so if there's something you're worried you're going to forget, you can write it down so that you can kind of clear your mind of that. I think that's critical. Having, I mean, again, probably challenging to do, but try as much as possible having a sleep routine, where you do the same thing every night, so your body knows, okay, it's time to go to bed, and having as much as possible the same time that you go to bed and wake up. Again, still not possible for me in my phase of life, but the more that you can do that, sort of there's this like a weekend jet lag that can develop. You're like, oh, I don't have to get up tomorrow. But the more you can stick to the same schedule, getting morning sunlight, and it kind of resetting your circadian rhythm is also really important. And I think also the physical activity can help you sleep better too. So if you're able to incorporate physical activity, I think generally people notice, unless they're doing extreme exercise, that generally their sleep improves. There are, a few supplements people debate. Melatonin is probably safe, although I feel like there's some debate about that now. Magnesium, especially magnesium glycinate, can be helpful. It's not a magic bullet, but it can be helpful. And then the last thing I'll mention is sleep apnea is hugely underdiagnosed, and women, especially in midlife, can develop it even with a normal body weight, and it may not have the typical symptoms of snoring. And so if people really are waking up not feeling rested, or keep waking up thinking it's because they have to pee, maybe they're actually waking up and then realize they have to go to the bathroom, making sure you get evaluated for sleep apnea, because there's lots of long-term consequences of untreated sleep apnea as well.
I want to chime in as well. I think, and we've talked about this with insulin sensitivity being such a huge piece of the puzzle, if not the piece, when it comes to metabolism, and how stress impacts that, and sleep is part of that too. But I think especially with sleep, we tend to immediately just focus on those nighttime things, and those are really important. But I like to have clients focus on like the whole day instead, and maybe not, one chunk at a time and what's realistic. But as moms, I know, all of us know, we go way too fast and too hard, and we just don't give ourselves time to process anything. So by the time we get to bed is the first time we're finally taking a deep breath in the day, oftentimes, right? And it's the first time your brain can then be like, oh, now what about this and what about this, right? And so that is where I think that is one of the biggest contributors to sleep, as well as sort of the stress throughout the day. So when we work on sleep with clients, I definitely want you to be thinking about, how am I building in moments, margins, like I have clients do 30-second breaks throughout the day and start with just one 30-second break. And that can feel so hard to like pause for a minute of your day. And yet that is ridiculous that we wouldn't give ourselves a minute twice in the day to pause and take some deep breaths. But I think really supporting the nervous system, especially with sunlight or movement earlier in the day, can make such a big difference on sleep. And oftentimes people don't think about it because it's not at night, right? It's not when we're trying to target that thing. Along with that goes eating in a way that's balancing your blood sugar throughout the day, so that again, you're not getting these spikes overnight or when it is time to go to bed.
I love all of those tips so much, because it does come into play like the whole day. For me, it's tied to parts of my cycle. Like I've started really tracking, and it's parts of my cycle. And I've just like, if you're going through this and you're struggling, I'll share what I do now is I just allow myself some grace when I'm up in the night, and I still rest. Like I don't get up and fold laundry, and I don't get up and check emails. I put on a meditation and I rest, so my body can still be still and my mind can still be as still as it can be in the middle of the night. But I do focus on just giving myself that grace, being like, this is one night bad, or 2 nights in a row bad. But it's just allowing my body to rest and still be in bed and not feel like I have to go clean the kitchen or do all the other things that are running through my mind. That I do just focus on the rest piece, because resting is still better than not resting, even though I'm not fully sleeping. But I love those other tips. Thank you, ladies.
I'm going to hop in too and just mention progesterone, because you said where you are in your cycle, right? So working with someone like Abby or a physician to understand where your progesterone is, because replacing that at some point might make a huge difference on sleep and then impact so many other pieces of the puzzle for some women, or even just learning how to support your progesterone, whether it's by taking it or in another way, can make a huge difference on sleep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's often the first hormone we start in perimenopause before estrogen. And some people only need it in certain parts of their cycle as well. So, and I'm sure Kate's had experience with this as well. But.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Estrogen gets a lot of hype as, the best thing in perimenopause. But I would say if it is a sleep disturbance, particularly that rumination where you're having trouble calming your mind, progesterone is always my go-to for that. Yeah.
And one other thing I'll mention too, if people are really struggling, so cognitive behavioral therapy is a kind of a recognized, and if our mental health provider had been here today, she probably would have mentioned this. So there's a specific CBT for insomnia. It's called CBTI. And there are local providers who will kind of administer it, but there's also a free app put out by the VA that people can download and work through the modules. And it's actually the best evidence for insomnia, the best studied, better than medications. And then I would conversely caution against kind of sleep aids like Benadryl and even prescription medications, because they aren't really helping you get more restorative sleep. Some of them are habit forming and have more long-term complications. So I think, I prescribe them, not infrequently, but I try to work with patients to do other things first, because they are not really improving your sleep. You're just helping you be asleep.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting discussion.